Hey guys, Adam Burns here. I'm with my wife Shelby, who usually has tons of questions about real estate based on the episodes that we're filming. But today, we're here to answer your viewer questions. A lot of you have written in with questions and comments on our videos, and we're going to read some of those today and answer them for you here. So, what's our first question?
Yeah, so first question, this was actually a question from a previous episode of that you mentioned screw piles. What are screw piles?
Yeah, so I talked about that in one of our construction update videos. Screw piles are essentially long metal tubes with a helical screw to them. They look like giant screws that you normally put into wood, but they drill down deep into the soil so that the building can sit on those and transfers the load from the building to that deeper soil. So they're typically used where the topsoil doesn't have the bearing capacity or enough kind of density to it to hold up the building.
Okay.
So the screw piles penetrate down deep so that the building can set on that deeper soil that has the better density or better bearing capacity to it so the building doesn't sink.
And do all of your construction properties use screw piles, or was this something new that you decided to use?
So it depends on the property. We do what's called a geotechnical report, which studies the type of soils underneath the surface to understand what the bearing capacity is and the soils as you go down.
Yeah.
We do that by drilling core samples. So we drill down in and then we take it out and analyze the soil that's there in the dirt and the clay and everything else. So our engineers will decide if the bearing capacity of the existing soil is such that a building can just sit right on it, or if we need a system like this. It's called a deep foundation.
Oh, interesting.
There's many, many different ways to skin this cat. It doesn't have to just be screw piles.
Sure.
There's a number of different piles or ways of transitioning from bearing on the surface to bearing down deep. Screw piles just being one of the most economical and effective ways of doing that.
Awesome.
Cool. So what else we got?
All right. So this question comes from Olia. I want to start looking at properties to buy for investment. Would a plot of land be a better choice to buy, hold, and then sell rather than buying a single family or duplex?
So, yeah, so my understanding of that question is, do I buy something that's cheaper, a piece of land, and just hold it for appreciation and
Yep.
then resell it?
Correct.
Or do I buy a single family or duplex, hold it, and then resell it? So from the sound of the question, it sounds like we're comparing appreciation of different assets, I would call it.
Right.
Land or single family, two family.
Yep.
If we're looking at those two, I think that if you don't know zoning and you don't know local ordinance and how that piece of land would be treated,
And
or
this
if,
is maybe your first property.
absolutely. So if this is your first property, I would not steer somebody toward buying a piece of land because chances are in a denser metropolitan area, that piece of land probably isn't buildable. That's why it hasn't been built on. They're not making any more land, so usually somebody would come in and have built a building there if it was easily possible.
Good
So buying that piece of land, you're not going to be able to do anything with it, so you're just paying taxes every single year, year over year, taxes, taxes, taxes. So there's a cost to it, but it doesn't necessarily appreciate as fast as something that has a useful life or useful value to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like with a single family or a two family, you can rent them out, gain some income. You could live in it yourself, so you could have that personal use of the property. You're going to get far more useful value out of the single family or the duplex.
Right.
And those are also going to appreciate much more quickly than a plot of land that may or may not be buildable.
Does your answer change if I'm a seasoned developer?
My answer could potentially change if you're a seasoned developer, if you know that the land can be improved in the future, or if you're able to purchase that piece of land subject to getting permits to build something on it. Then you're going to have a greater forced appreciation value because you're buying something that's super affordable or more affordable than buying an existing building.
Right.
But you're going to go through the process of constructing something new there, thereby creating more value than the money you're putting into it and creating further forced appreciation and further return for yourself.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thanks for answering that.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions?
We do. So this question comes from Yoni John, and this individual wants to know, okay, how do they get in touch with you if they're looking to work with you?
Yeah, so if you're in the Boston area and you want to collaborate or you want to, talk about real estate development or get in touch with us for any other reason, you can send us a comment or a DM on any of our social media. You can also send me a direct email, info@burnsrealtyboston.com. Best way to get in touch is email, comment, or DM. I remember this particular comment. He was asking about working with us and kind of learning more about development. Is that right?
Yeah, yep, that's correct.
So we actually run an intern program every single summer. So if there's any interest in working with us as an intern in 2022, next summer, we'll start taking applications for that in the next few months. So feel free to get in touch if you have interest in learning more about development and construction and the real estate industry in general. Or if you have some other talent that you think could be useful to us, we'd love to hear from you. So we're all ears. If you want to reach out, definitely use any of the methods we just talked about and get in touch with us.
Awesome. All right, thanks for answering that.
Do we have any other questions?
We do. So this one is from an anonymous viewer wondering, what should they look for in a real estate agent? Like, what makes a great real estate agent?
That's a good question. I think it differs based on the individual and the consumer. So it's going to vary by person what they could value or what they should be valuing in an agent. But I think above all else, experience in, so if you're a buyer, experience in what you're looking to buy, or if you're a seller, experience in selling in your local market or the type of home that you're looking to sell. So what I mean by that is if you're looking for a multifamily property for investment, you should be working with a real estate agent that has some experience in investment property and can understand what those important things are. I mentioned local market. Real estate is highly localized, so working with somebody that has experience in your local market is important. Massachusetts being a small state, we kind of do real estate all over Massachusetts because it is such a small state. We have experience pretty much everywhere in the state, and different agents within our group have experience in different towns and different areas of the state, but we all work as one and we bounce ideas off each other. So finding an agent that's experienced locally in the market that you're looking in, as well as with the type of property that you're looking for, and then somebody you just get along with. You want to feel comfortable working with this person because there needs to be a sense of trust. So somebody that you trust and feel comfortable with is a paramount feature to look for, regardless of who you are and what you're looking for. So I'd say interview any number of agents, anybody that you can find. Zillow is a great resource for finding agents that are active in the market. Googling local real estate agents or local real estate brokerages and looking at the About Me page, seeing whose bio kind of speaks to you at the end of the day is another good way to find potential agents to work with. And then if you do that, schedule a 10-minute phone call with each of the people that you're considering. Run through a couple of basic questions and ask them things that will help you get to the bottom of, do they really understand what you're looking for?
And work with just one. Because full disclosure, when I first moved
Yes.
to Boston, I think it's important to tell this story. I worked with at least 5 different agents all at once, thinking that they each were going to show me a different property. And they did, but I was all about who could show me the property the quickest. Little did I know that all agents have access to the same database. So that one agent could have shown me all the same properties. But I'm wondering, what is the benefit of working with just one? Why should I have to choose just one? Or should I choose just one versus working with multiple agents?
You should work with one agent and trust that they're going to do their best to show you everything that they could possibly show you. It goes back to that trust and that relationship that I was kind of touching on previously. Working with somebody that you're comfortable with, they also need to feel comfortable knowing that you're committed to working with them. Because if they don't have commitment from you, that you're only working with them, they're not going to work as hard for you knowing that they could just as easily lose the opportunity for their commission at any point because you're working with multiple people.
Sure.
So it boils down to respect and the relationship. So if you have this open, honest relationship with one person and you can tell them what you like and what you don't like, they're going to work harder for you knowing that they have your committed business, and they're going to make sure that they go above and beyond to get you into a home at the end of the day.
Gotcha. Good to know.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. All right.
Absolutely.
Any other questions that we have?
So I did have one other question that was posed by Bet Ann. It was a little bit longer, so I'm going to paraphrase it, but it essentially boils down to if you're going to live in a community that has an expensive HOA, like a guard service, lawn maintenance, road maintenance, maybe water features that need to be maintained, if you live in a community like that, does it make more sense to rent or buy into that sort of community? And HOA meaning homeowners association, so people that take care of all of those things that I just listed, as well as kind of manage bringing in those funds and accounting and just taking care of the community in general. So I guess I would answer that as you would have to go back to the math that we talk about in our rent versus buying episode and understand the metrics for sunk costs versus renting, sunk costs versus buying. I don't think that there's one clear choice or one clear answer for do you rent or buy in that sort of higher HOA community, because if you're renting in that community, it's likely that those HOA fees are just being built into a higher rent.
Yep.
And then if you're buying, those HOA fees are going to just be contributing to your further sunk costs of buying. So when we talked about in that episode, comparing the sunk cost of renting versus the sunk cost of buying, those HOA fees are going to make it a higher cost to buy, but they're also probably going to mean a higher sunk cost of renting. So just going through, again, go back to that episode, we really break it down on how to run the cost for sunk cost in renting, sunk cost in buying, and then just comparing the two. Is it cheaper long-term to rent a property in that community, enjoy those lovely amenities, or does it make more sense to buy? It's going to come down to the math at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it might make sense, correct me if I'm wrong, to also factor in that you are hopefully building value in your home over time. You own something, right? Whereas if you're renting, you don't actually have a ton of equity, if any, in the home. You know, you're kind of, I hate to say throwing money away, but you're not investing in something.
Yep.
Whereas if you own it, you're investing in that. Does that come into play here?
Absolutely. So that's an additional factor that we talked about in that episode that isn't necessarily a direct impact on the math of is it more costly to rent or to buy, but it's additional factor that you definitely have to consider. You know, homes do generally appreciate over time. Obviously, there's some short-term dips in the market, but generally speaking, over the long term, home values do trend upwards. And then in a community like this where there's higher HOA fees is probably better maintained. And if it's better maintained, it's probably going to hold its value much better and appreciate more quickly than the broader market or if you were to rent or buy in the surrounding area.
Right. And I think it's important to also take into consideration, like, how often do you want to be moving, right? Like if you're renting, you're at your landlord's discretion at the end of the day of how long they want to keep you in there as a tenant, versus if you buy, you kind of get to decide how long you want to live there for.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a lot of different life decisions that play into that overall rent versus buy decision.
Yep.
But yeah, we boil it down simply in that episode to just a math equation, but you're very right that there are a whole litany of other things to think about when you make that decision.
Now, thinking about renting from a different perspective, like say that I'm thinking of it from like, okay, maybe I decided to buy regardless, but rent it out to somebody else, right? Do you find, and you might not have the answer to this and that's okay, do you find that these communities allow folks to do that, to buy into this community with a homeowners association and then rent it out to somebody else?
Yeah, it's not something that I can answer for you.
That's okay.
So if you are buying into a community with a homeowners association, it's going to be...
Usually they're pretty private.
Yeah, but it's going to be laid out in their documentation. So
If they allow
every every homeowners association is going to have different rules and regulations.
Sure.
So I can't give you a blanket answer to would that be allowed.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on the rules and regulations for that homeowners association.
Yeah, that's something to look into. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering that.
Yeah, so that's all the viewer questions we had today. Thanks so much, guys.